A deadly discovery beneath the bathtub. This is a true story about a cursed object that left an indelible mark on my life. It all began with a deep clean of my apartment in the infamous city of Marino. Let's take a brief detour, dear readers, and discuss this place. Marino, located near St. Petersburg but part of the Seveloshki district, has gained a grim reputation in the Russian internet as a hub of suicides, violence, murders, prostitution, drug use, rapes, and robberies. There are two explanations for this situation. The mystical. The city is near the Dyatkino metro station, and the number 9 is an upside-down 6, reminding us of the ominous triple sixes. Additionally, Marino is squeezed between two cemeteries, New and Old Marinsky, with the latter near the metro station. The logical. These are the cheapest apartments near the metro due to being in Leningrad region, dense construction, and underdeveloped infrastructure. There's still no clinic, just rural outpatient facilities, a severe shortage of kindergarten and school spots, and windows facing each other, creating a sense of confinement. Due to the low prices, various people with differing social statuses, not always law-abiding, have settled here. Back to my story. While cleaning, I remembered I had never cleaned under the bathtub. Determined to rectify this, I began vigorously sweeping. Previous tenants had apparently left me a legacy of wrappers, dust, hair, some lint, bottle caps, and a hairbrush. This find immediately caught my attention. It radiated a powerful wave of negative energy, as if I had stumbled into a dark, abandoned place. Even skeptics can feel discomfort from such instincts. The black massage brush looked new, its teeth intact, but I had no desire to use it. Greed, however, prevented me from throwing it away. Then I remembered my aunt had complained about her broken brushes and could use a new one. Problem solved. I would gift it to her. The next day, we met at the cinema, and after the movie, I handed her the black brush. My aunt, upon holding it, also sensed the malevolence within. "Oh, how eerie! Should I throw it away?" she said. But greed won out again, and the brush ended up in her bag. At that moment, I didn't realize I would see my relative for the last time alive. Life continued. I worked, occasionally tried to call my aunt, but she didn't answer. I thought she must be busy. A couple of days later, her neighbor from the communal apartment called to say my aunt had been taken to intensive care. Hours later, she called again to report my aunt had died. The official causes of death included diabetes, hypertension, a previous heart attack, and cerebrovascular disease. Yet she was only 68, worked as a conductor, moved independently, and managed her own affairs. Her colleagues were shocked by her sudden death. I still feel pangs of guilt as the brush lay on the floor where my aunt had once been in a diabetic coma. It sounds silly to say this about an inanimate object, but the brush looked almost satisfied, as if it maliciously smiled, pleased to have done something wicked. I know it's foolish, but my aunt always warned against taking others' lost belongings, particularly hairbrushes, as they are often used in curses because they come into contact with the victim's hair. Human hair is tied to one's energy and life force. Superstitious individuals often avoid barbers or take their hair with them. Perhaps it's all coincidence, and I'm wasting your time, but I immediately tossed the brush down the garbage chute of the St. Petersburg communal building. I hope it never finds its way to anyone else. May it be burned at the dump. The face at the window. This strange and chilling incident occurred soon after the first, when I had spent weeks intrigued by the lewd couple living across the street. They never drew their curtains, allowing me to observe their actions. Each evening, like Sherlock Holmes, I leaned by the window, trying to decipher the mystery that captivated me. Over time, this habit evolved into a hobby. One evening, as darkness engulfed their building and I prepared to leave, I decided to take one last glance. My attention was drawn to a window that seemed to harbor an unusual detail. I had never noticed it before, as it was always dark, and I had never seen a living person there during my observations. But this time, someone was definitely present. In the gloom, I could just make out a face, elongated, aged, with pronounced features. Nothing particularly strange or frightening about it, unlike in my previous story, yet it was odd because the apartment had long been vacant. I pondered why someone would be there at such a late hour, but found no answers. My curiosity piqued. I continued to watch, questions swirling in my mind. Had new tenants moved in? Or was I witnessing another paranormal event, perhaps a ghost of the deceased tenant wandering its old home. The face remained eerily still, and unease settled over me. It had been more than 5 minutes, and the figure hadn't moved, as if it were a sticker stuck to the glass. But after a few moments, it finally stirred, slowly turning and disappearing into the darkness of the apartment. I continued to gaze at the window for a few more minutes, hoping to see something else, but eventually stopped my watch. The oddities didn't end there. An hour or so later, sleep began to overtake me, and unable to resist, I went to bed. Here's where things got really interesting. Let me recount everything I remember, step by step. In my dream, I found myself in an unfamiliar place, surrounded by dim light. I walked forward into the unknown, my hand brushing the wall on my right. Visibility was poor, but I could make out old, peeling wallpaper and 2 white doors, one slightly ajar. It seemed I was in a corridor of a very old building. As I peered into the inky darkness of the open door, childhood nightmares flooded back, making me want to escape. Yet something inexplicable pulled me toward it. Against my better judgment, I cautiously approached the door and nudged it. Slowly, it creaked open. Inside, it was slightly brighter than the corridor, the dim glow from the street lamps barely reaching the room's center. A dilapidated bed stood in one corner, with an ancient carpet hanging over it, bare walls surrounding me. But that wasn't all I noticed. At the window stood a completely motionless figure, a dark silhouette of a lanky person, its body unnaturally twisted to the left. A sudden urge to flee gripped me, but against my primal fear, I found myself moving closer. Something was controlling my body. I tried to resist, but it was futile. 1 step, 2, 3, 4, 5, until I was 3 meters away from that. Yes, damn it, from that, because even at such a close distance, I couldn't comprehend what I was facing. Its appearance was utterly horrifying. Bare feet, a filthy fabric covering its knees, resembling a dress, tattered rags hanging from its grotesquely twisted body, and a wild head of hair. A chilling dread paralyzed me. I started to tremble while it stood still. Eventually, its head began to turn slowly toward me. Just seeing its profile revealed 2 black, gaping holes instead of eyes. Then I jolted awake, drenched in cold sweat. That night, I couldn't bring myself to sleep again. The next day, feeling completely shaken, I stayed home. The haunting nightmare compelled me to conduct my investigation, convinced that somehow I had entered that very vacant apartment from across the street in my sleep. By 5 o'clock, I stood at the entrance of the building, waiting for an opportunity to enter. As soon as the door opened for a young couple, I slipped inside. A musty odor mixed with boiled cabbage filled the stairwell. The elevator seemed out of order, so I took the stairs, calculating which apartment corresponded to the window. I guessed it was apartment 34, distinguished by its dilapidated appearance. Before ringing the bell, I leaned in to listen. An oppressive silence enveloped the door, the dead quiet of abandoned spaces. Nevertheless, I pressed the doorbell. No sound came from the other side. I knocked loudly, and an elderly woman from a neighboring apartment emerged. Yes, my suspicions were confirmed. She indicated that the apartment I was knocking on had been long unoccupied, and something tragic had happened to the previous tenants. I didn't probe for details, apologized for the disturbance, and turned to leave. What that phenomenon was, I still don't know. I saw nothing unusual in the window of the abandoned apartment thereafter. But damn it, I am absolutely sure that in my dream, I visited that apartment and came face to face with whatever had caught my attention that evening. And I am convinced it was not human. The train. I could start this story with a long backstory, recounting the coincidences and circumstances that led me to this unfortunate situation. But honestly, none of that would interest the reader. Here I was on an old, time-worn train platform where grass poked through the cracked asphalt. The station was closed, despite trains still stopping here. A glance at the dusty schedule confirmed my fears. The last train had left, and the next one wouldn't arrive until 8 in the morning. It was almost midnight, and it seemed I'd have to spend the night here, accompanied only by an abandoned building and a stray dog sniffing around for scraps. Not the best company. This rundown settlement lacked hotels or ride-sharing options. I urgently needed to reach the neighboring town. Trekking through the woods to the nearest highway would take just as long as waiting for the morning train. I was stuck. The only comfort was that it was a warm summer night. In winter, I'd be in real trouble. Settling on the remnants of a bench, I placed my bag beside me and contemplated my dire situation. The matters awaiting me in the neighboring town were pressing enough to pull me out on the road that evening. But now, I had missed the train. What was I to do? Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by a beam of light cutting through the night, followed by unmistakable sounds. A train? Here, in this forgotten corner? If it really was a train, I'd do whatever it took to catch it. I'd fall to the conductor's feet, bang my head against the wheels, kiss the engine and all the carriages if necessary. But hopefully, it would just require some cash. As the train approached, it slowed down, and I finally caught a glimpse of it in the dim light of the flickering lantern, barely illuminating the asphalt beneath me. The train was magnificent, polished, and clearly not local. I didn't know much about trains, but something told me steam engines were a relic of the past, long replaced by electric ones and diesel trains. Yet here it was, puffing out smoke and hissing with warmth, a genuine steam locomotive. Incredible. Had some restored model started running again? I had only seen such things in museums. Time was short. As the train came to a stop, the door of one carriage opened, revealing a figure. Realizing I had to act fast or risk being left behind, I sprang up, grabbed my belongings, and rushed toward the open door. "Hello, excuse me, I'm here too." Stumbling over my words and the imposing figure in the doorway, I struggled to initiate a coherent conversation. But the conductor remained silent, arms crossed behind his back. I couldn't see his face in the low light, as the single bulb in the vestibule was positioned behind him. Why did I assume he was the conductor? Who else could he be? Surely a figure like that wouldn't wear a different uniform on such a train. "I'll pay," I finally managed to say, reaching for my bag. The conductor shook his head, stepping back slightly and gesturing for me to enter. Not one for lengthy pleasantries in my predicament, I jumped into the carriage. Once inside, I fumbled through my bag for money, but he didn't wait. He opened the carriage door and walked further inside. What was he doing? The carriage was strange. It resembled an electric train car, except there were fewer benches, and they were made of wood. I wasn't surprised to find it empty. It was the middle of the night, after all. Who would be traveling at this hour? The conductor pointed to one of the benches, waiting for me to sit before he quietly left again, not waiting for payment. Fine, I'd settle up when I got off. The train jolted and smoothly glided into the night. I settled back, glancing out the window. Thank goodness. I didn't want to spend the night with a stray dog. What if it had friends who thought I'd make a good meal? I'd rather not end my days in a dog's stomach. The train rocked gently on the tracks, and suddenly, feeling the weight of exhaustion, I realized I was drifting off. It was surprisingly comfortable. The sound of the wheels was almost soothing. Something jolted me awake. Had I fallen asleep? The train seemed to slow down. A firm hand shook my shoulder. "Huh? What? I'm not sleeping." The conductor nodded, gesturing toward the exit. "Already? We've arrived?" He nodded again and repeated the gesture. "Okay, great." I leaped from my seat, grabbed my bag, and headed toward the door. Trees outside the window began to blur by, slowing down. I wondered what time it was. Thank goodness I had my phone, but as I pulled it from my pocket, I found the battery was dead. Of course, if you don't charge a device, that's what happens. Hopefully, I could recharge it soon. We reached the door just as the train came to a complete stop. The conductor opened the doors and gestured again, hinting it was time to get off. As I stepped out, I paused. Wait, how long was I? Before I could finish, a soft yet forceful shove from behind sent me stumbling onto the platform. I stopped after a couple of steps. "Hey!" I spun around, only to find the door had closed tightly behind me. No one was there to argue with. What a strange guy! The locomotive puffed heavily, releasing another plume of smoke, and gradually began to pull away from the platform into the dark tunnel ahead, merging with the pre-dawn summer haze. Strange. I suddenly realized I never saw the conductor's face. He'd stood backlit by the light, then seemed to vanish into the shadows of the canopy. I shuddered, startled by a raspy, muffled sound nearby. Turning, I saw an old man standing on the platform, mouth agape. A cigarette dangled from his lower lip. "Hey, old man," I waved in front of his face, and only then did he snap out of his daze, jabbing me with a stick he used as a cane. Hey, watch it! Are you alive? The old man asked, eyes wide, but I managed to dodge his next swing. What? Why wouldn't I be? I don't recognize this place. Where am I? I needed to get to Verkney. Yeah, this is Verkney. He didn't look much like it. What's he supposed to look like? Well, I expected a station, some buildings, civilization. There is civilization, in the town. The station is over there, he pointed, just renovated recently. It doesn't look like a station. That dead train never came to the station, not ever. What train? Look, the old man, surprisingly strong for his age, turned me to face the direction the train had gone. I caught a glimpse of the last carriage dissolving into the darkness of the tunnel, becoming semi-transparent, then losing its color, turning into a haze, either smoke or fog, until it vanished completely. Lucky you, the old man said. At that moment, I realized my expression mirrored his, minus the cigarette. A dead train rarely picks up passengers, and even less frequently lets them go. You're fortunate. It must have been important for you. That's why it decided to help. What kind of train was that? Where did it come from? Oh, it's been a while. See that tunnel? That's where it crashed. The tunnel collapsed and the train couldn't stop. Everyone burned. Everything burned. They built another line after that, and this one was abandoned. The tracks were taken up, the tunnel sealed with stone. That's all there is to it. But it appears now and then. Rarely, but it does. Only when it's really needed. By dawn, it always returns to its place. If the conductor leads you to an empty carriage, you're lucky. You'll get to where you need to go, maybe even across the ocean overnight. But if you find yourself among people, you'll ride with them until the end of days. But don't worry, kid. You only meet it once in a lifetime. You won't see it again.